Hi everyone. I guess you could call this video continuing to processing the effects of Hurricane Helene. I, like many of us, have continued to watch videos and drone footage of communities all over the southeast coast of the US where people have been impacted by this horrific storm that just keeps revealing itself on a daily basis. I live inland 6 miles from the Gulf of Mexico, 5 miles inland from Sarasota Bay. And our area, unlike Tropical Storm Debbie when it came through just a few weeks ago, was very high and dry this time. We had a lot of branches down and wind damage, but nothing that you would consider to be significant. But the videos that I watched, it's just so hard to look at places where you've lived and where you've vacationed with friends and family and to realize that is no more and it may never be coming back. This is going to be a little more raw than my usual videos, a little less uplifting because I want to tackle some topics that we really need to be thinking about and talking about, maybe more than in some circles we already are. So many have said, including the United Nations, the World Health Organization, that the number one thing you can do to reduce your carbon footprint is to give up animal agriculture. Now, I hinted at this in my last video, and there was a statement from Google or YouTube saying, well, no, the main causes of global warming are cars and other sources not related to what we put on our plate 3 times a day. But again, you can do your own research and look at what the World Health Organization has said about this in report after report, and that the gases produced by animal agriculture contribute to the heating of the planet as much as anything, if not more so. So when you look at the devastation, when it comes in your own backyard, as Hurricane Helene did, it's just so sad. And I saw the house that I lived in on Anna Maria Island. We lived 6 blocks from the end of the island called Bean Point, and you can see this in the videos. You can see my house, which was a very distinctive yellow, built to Hurricane Andrew standards, which meant the first floor was not to be occupied other than by cars or recreational purposes, and that allowed for the water to flow through. When we moved in, we even had to replace the wood that was on the first floor level where the garages were with pressure-treated wood, and basically had to tear out the wood that was already there, doing the damage, essentially, that a hurricane would have done, and replacing it with pressure-treated wood, which supposedly was more hurricane-resistant. But then you see the video, and probably it didn't make too much difference when the storm surge came in and took over the island. One friend of mine described it sitting in his house on Key Royale, which is another place I lived on Anna Maria, as the waves just kept going back and forth from one side of the island to the other. And to watch the devastation of Holmes Beach and Bradenton Beach, places where I used to run all the time with my running club, it's just very hard to look at that and go like, have I done enough to get the message out? You know, taking it on a very personal level. Is there anything any of us can do? It can be so overwhelming to see these videos of the devastation and feel like part of your heart has been ripped out. And I've seen interviews in different places in Florida where people say, oh, we're going to rebuild. They always say that. And in a lot of cases they do. But now that I hear this, I think, and maybe you do too, who is going to pay for this? You know, the insurance companies can't keep doling out money to pay for these massive rebuilds. St. Armand's Key here in the Sarasota area, a place where I went with my parents, and they often went to eat coming off of Siesta Key, which was also totally underwater this time. The headlines this morning, and you know, we are almost a week out from the storm passing through here, say this is devastation unlike anything we've seen. This is different. And one restaurant owner of the Crab and Fin, a very popular restaurant on St. Armand's Circle, was quoted in the local newspapers this morning as saying, it's going to cost us anywhere $600,000 to $800,000 to restore it, let alone trying to make it a nice place that people would want to come to. I have a friend who went out to St. Armand's Key yesterday, and he said the stench was so awful, just unbearable. And the newspaper accounts, the videos this morning that I'm seeing, same thing. Because what happened is when the surge came in, it brought all the fish that were in the area, and now they have died. And so that is the smell that is just reeking and overcoming people as they try to finally get back to their properties. So the question begs asking, should we be rebuilding on these barrier islands? And it comes up every time. And because people love these places, of course they want to be close to it. But me just being 6 miles away from the Gulf of Mexico and not seeing a single drop from the surge, we really need to be asking ourselves, should we be rebuilding in these areas and maybe let nature take its path? I once did a story back in St. Louis when I was a TV reporter there on a woman who called me. I was the consumer investigative reporter, and she said, I built this house in a subdivision and I found out the builder took out a bend in a creek, and now the creek is taking back its former path and my house has been condemned because it's falling into what is now the creek. And the same thing happened here on Siesta Key. Midnight Pass, something that had been covered up, literally, like 40 years ago, so more homes could be built on the amazing Siesta Key. Well, guess what? Mother Nature rushed in this time and reopened that pass for the first time in 40 years. Are they going to close it again? You know, I'm always asking in my books, in my writings, in my talks, what did Mother Nature intend? And when we play with Mother Nature like this, she always wins. And it may take years for her to reclaim her ground, but that's what's happening here. And with everything that's going on with global warming, we just think of a glass of water. When you have ice in it and it melts, the water is going to rise. And that's what's happening to our oceans. Water levels are rising. There are signs in Sarasota by certain dates where the water level is going to be. So this is just part of that process. And coming to grips with it, no matter where we are, I know people would like to move to places that are immune from global warming and the effects of climate change. But increasingly, as these storms become larger and more pervasive and taking up a much larger part of real estate of our countries, no matter where you are, we are going to have to come to grips with how do we deal with this, and is there anything that we can do? If there's any good news, it is that forecasting has gotten way, way better than it used to be. 100 years ago, folks in Key West and in the Florida Keys had no idea a hurricane was coming until it was literally wiping out their neighborhoods, their communities. And the forecast for Hurricane Helene was spot on. It really had it developing long before you could see any kind of hint of it on radar. And having been in the news business and been in the position of where I actually had to do some amateur forecasting, doing the morning news when we didn't have our meteorologist in, I can see some of these trends. And with Helene, there was a little bit of a wobble, and I thought for a second it might come further into the coast than it did. As it turns out, we got what's called the dirty side of the hurricane, the fast whipping around winds, and that's what created so much damage and the storm surge. But it did track it to come to the northern part of the state in the Florida Panhandle. So it did stay off coast as they predicted it would. But what was amazing to me is that there was just no clue 3 or 4 days out that this is really going to be as massive as they said it was going to be, and it was. So the technology has gotten better, and as I record this, they're predicting yet maybe another 1 or 2. We are at that very busy time of the hurricane season, and as predicted, this is a very active season, and it's not over yet. So staying prepared, staying informed, not being in denial, as I know some people are. I'm seeing all kinds of strange behaviors, and that's just another reminder to stay in touch with your feelings, to be able to talk about your feelings. I was with someone where a business was closed, not necessarily related to the storm, but there are a lot of emotions that come with change and doing different things. And if you don't talk about your feelings at the time, it kind of stays inside and festers and can blow up later as anger with the people who are closest to you. So I just offer that out there. There are some meditation apps that are really good. Plug into those if you don't want to get professional help or can't. There are some ways that we can deal with the incredible stress of all this, because we must. It's coming to a backyard near you, whether you want it or not, or want to believe it or not. It's really here. And to see parts of your past just get sucked out to sea. I mean, it's only stuff. I mean, we say that, right? These are only things. that can be replaced, but still it is part of your heart. So in the comments below, let me know what you're going through and if you found some good ways to cope with the stress of all this and what your best resources are. If it has helped you, I'm sure it will help our community. And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Gotta run.